This is a stopwatch I've always used. Yeah, you can't really screw up a stopwatch, can you? It costs like $5-7. I got it at a hardware store back in Alpine. It served me well, despite the fact that after it gets past the 40-minute mark, usually it like resets for some reason, and it goes for 30 seconds more from 0, and then it stops. I think that might be, I set it on some kind of mode or limit or something. I don't know how to unset it because I threw away the instructions like an idiot. Also, every night at 11:30, it activates its alarm. Its alarm isn't really all that loud, it's just a beeping noise that goes on for about a minute, but sometimes I'll just be laying in bed like, and then beep, 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 beep. It'll penetrate my dreams. Let's see. Anything else worth of interest to show you? My DS. I don't play it all that much because I don't go on many road trips anymore. I kind of miss going on road trips. Let's see if I can find my old mic. It's probably around here somewhere. Loading time, loading time. Ah, there it is. It's on top of this shelf. This is the old mic, the one I've used most of the time, most of my Let's Play career. It's just a stick mic. It cost about $15 back in Alpine. I bought it from the only computer store they have there. It served me well, except the little, let's see if I can get it closer. It's got a little button here, like if you press it down and you forget to unpress it, then it's not going to record sound. And I've told you guys a few times before that that's fucked up a video or two in the past, so I always have to remember if I'm using this to make sure that this is in the correct position. But other than that, the sound quality is decent, but I think sound quality from the headset mic is just a little bit better. Okay. Well, that's all I really wanted to show you for the time being. I was gonna answer your questions, I really should do that, but I'll finish up with this video and then I'll probably move to a more open arena, or maybe I'll just answer them here. I could do it in the living room, but this is probably as good a place as any because I've got my Dr. Pepper right there. So, I'll finish this editing and I'll be back. Well, now that all the hoopla is out of the way, let's actually get on to reading your questions. These are all written on a Word document in basically the order that I read them and then copy-pasted them onto it, so there's not any real specific favoritism or order or anything. Let's just get started. First off, are you... Oh, and by the way, I'm reading these verbatim. Spelling and grammar errors are usually not mine. Are you a fan of reading books? And if so, what is your favorite and worst book you have ever read? I thought about this for quite a bit after I read it, and I decided that, well, I guess at different times of my life I had different favorite books. In elementary school, for example, my favorite book was The Westing Game. Why was it my favorite book? Because every time I read it, I found out something new about it. It was a book that rewarded me for putting in extra time and effort for it. The more I read this book, the more I paid attention to it, the more informed I was of the events that happened inside of it. It's still a good book to this day, and I've read it recently, about a year ago, and it still holds up as one of my favorites. So, judging by the fact that I like books that are rereadable, kind of rewatchable in a sense, if you want to get, cinematic, then I have to say my favorite book will have to be House of Leaves. That's because, like The Westing Game, I could read this book over and over and over again and still be fascinated by it, still learn something new about it, and still find a new story element, a new clue, a new character, a new situation, a new motive, a new something that was left out of my first or second or third reading. How long is this book? Westing Game is about 200 pages. That doesn't take too long to read. This is about almost 700 pages, but since the formatting of the book is so obtuse, those pages don't take long to read at all. I read this book in like 2 days. Westing Game I read in about 3 hours. So books that are short and rereadable are usually books I like best. They might not be the best books I've ever read in terms of content, or in terms of writing style, or theme, or message, but they are books that that kind of resonate with me in a way that I just want to see them again and again and again. Now, worst books I've ever read. I guess saying any of R.L. Stine's Goosebumps books would be kind of the cheap answer, but that would be a pretty fair assumption. I'm sure anybody who's read those books recently can agree that they are terrible. In fact, if you want to read just how terrible they are, I'm opening an RC, by the way. If you want to read just how terrible they are, there is a blog out there called Blogger Beware. It is hilarious because it basically reviews all these books, starting with the first series and going on to like Goosebumps 2000 and Choose Your Own Goosebumps and other stuff like that. Not a lot of these books were ever legitimately decent, but most of them were even worse than I remember them. R.L. Stine's ghostwriters are terrible or were terrible. Is the guy still popular? I don't know if he's still popular or not. Do kids still read Goosebumps? You guys know? I don't know. I don't know what my little cousin does. He's like 9, and all I know is that he plays about as probably more video games than I do, which is kind of terrifying. Then again, I don't play as much video games as I used to, but that's beside the point. We're talking about books here. This is Bookcast. Yeah, I'm not going to say those count because they're already intrinsically terrible. The worst novel, because that's kind of what you've probably been going for with this question, worst novel I've ever read, would have to be, since there's no art or title anywhere, I'd have to say The Funhouse by Owen West, otherwise known as Dean Koontz. This book, how long is it? Like, almost 200 pages. Imagine a generic bad horror movie. A movie about crazy carnies that is 90 minutes long, and 80 minutes of it is pointless, useless, utterly irrelevant exposition. Just going on and on and on about characters you don't give a crap about situations you don't care about, and every once in a while there's a scene where something happens, but it's not very compelling because you don't care. The characters are one-dimensional, they're only there to fill a purpose, to die, and the climax is so because they kill the only character that you honestly gave a shit about throughout the entire book, and they kill her because the protagonist that you're supposed to care about doesn't do anything to help her because she's too scared. Not to mention that the villain is just a really tall dude dressed up as Frankenstein. Ooh, so scary! There was a movie made out of this book, and I imagine the movie was probably better. This book is... the exposition isn't terrible, it's just irrelevant. I mean, out of the 180-something pages in this book, like, 150 of it is exposition. And none of it matters. The only character you care about is the best friend of the protagonist, because she's the only character who actually has a personality. She's the only character that is identifiable from the rest. She's the only character I remember at all. Just because she had a personality, she had faults, she had strengths, she had something about her, a sense that she was almost real. But the other characters are just so one-dimensional. Ugh. There are two characters near the end of the book whose only purpose is to die, and they do nothing else but die. They have no personality. I don't remember them having any meaningful lines of dialogue. I don't even remember what their description was, except one's a nerdy guy, and one's a really hunky, like, football player. Wow, those are great descriptions. I totally know everything about these characters now, and I care about their well-being. It's an awful book. Don't read it. It's not a so bad it's good book. Don't read it. Please don't read it. But that's not the worst thing I've ever read. Certainly not. I've read, well, then again, Goosebumps, but even they are not that terrible when compared to the worst short story I've ever read. It was a 9th grade English class, and we had read a short story called The Scarlet Abyss. Not Abyss as in E-B-Y-S-S. Abyss as in I-B-I-S, which is like a type of tropical bird or some crap. This story is... I don't even know... Maybe it's just that I was too young to understand it at the time, or maybe there's some hidden meaning to it I don't get, or maybe it's really profound, but I remember the story being awful, terrible, nonsensical, infuriating almost, and I had to write a 3-page paragraph about it, which is almost as long as the story. So, I remember hating it forever. So, I've come up with a punishment for myself for not getting this out as early as I planned, and by not uploading videos for a while. I'm going to do a live, dramatic reading. Not live, because you won't see it, because it'll be recorded, but I'm going to do a dramatic reading of The Scarlet Abyss. I just have to find an excerpt of it somewhere online. I'm sure it's there. Apparently, The Scarlet Abyss is this author's most famous writing, and it's in a lot of children's literature books, unfortunately, because a lot of children have to suffer through it. So I'll find that, and that'll be a bonus to this Q&A. You'll get to hear me grate through that. Oh, joy. It'll be you who suffer, not me. I just have to read it. You guys have to listen. I pity you, and I pity myself. Double-edged sword, nobody wins. On to the next question. Do you like old Universal horror movies of the 30s and 40s? I probably would if I actually watched any of them. I love monster movies, but I haven't watched a lot of the old monster movies, and that makes me kind of sad. I guess the oldest classic monster movie I've ever seen is The Creature from the Black Lagoon, but that's not from the 30s and 40s. I don't even think that's... I think that's RKO. I don't think that's Universal. Maybe my memory's wrong, but I swear that The Creature from the Black Lagoon is RKO, and it was like 1954 when that came out, so that's way too late. I haven't seen the classic Wolfman, Dracula, The Mummy, or anything like that, though I have seen some of the Hammer horror films. And modern monster movies, some of which are good, some of which are bad, most of which are bad. So, I'll probably tell you if I like them when I see them, which I'm sure I probably will like them, because I love old horror movies. Which of all the Mortal Kombat series did you like the most? Well, to be honest with you, I have never played a Mortal Kombat game for more than 30 minutes at a time, and the last time I played one was on the SNES, so answering this question is kind of impossible for me. I'm sorry, I just don't really like fighting games. Not really my genre. Maybe you guys could recommend a fighting game or two to me. I don't really know what I'm looking for or what I want. Just tell me a good fighting game and what you like about it, and I'll see if it appeals to me. Because I want to get into at least one fighting game, because, well, when I went to QuakeCon with my friends, they went there to participate in the fighting game tournament, and I felt kind of left out, because I don't play fighting games, so I spent a lot of time just watching them play fighting games and not understanding what was going on. So, yeah, if you want to recommend a game to me, certainly go ahead and shoot it. Give me one. Have you seen Creeping Terror done by the guys from MST3K? No. I kind of want to, though, but that would mean I'd have to watch The Creeping Terror again, in a way. But The Creeping Terror is no longer the worst movie I've ever seen. Oh, no, not by a long shot. I know what the 3 worst movies I've ever seen are. The 3rd worst movie is Vampires. Vampires is the cheapest gangsta vampire movie I've ever seen, and the only gangsta vampire movie I ever want to see. Please don't watch it. There are some moments of so bad it's good, but most of it is just... I can't understand what anyone's saying because they're speaking in Ebonics, and really bad mumbly Ebonics at that. The acting is non-existent. The sets... What sets? These make the sets in Plan 9 look like the sets in a Steven Spielberg movie. Everything is so cheap. There's an explosion near the end of the movie, and it's the most hilariously cheap thing you can ever imagine. My God, it's so bad.